Oh, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages.
Yeah.
This is not the sideshow.
Yeah.
This is not the undercard.
Yeah.
This is the main event.
Yeah.
Ryan Baldwin here.
Yeah.
Over there, my right-hand man sitting on my left-hand side, the Colossus of Charisma, the Teflon Talker, the boy wonder, Mason Shepherd.
Yeah. 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 Let me talk to ya.
This weekend was horrible for me. It was absolutely garbage.
It's a tough weekend for you.
All three of my teams lost. My Penguins lost. Again, we were on a 2-game winning streak after coming off a 7-game losing streak. Now we're losing again. My Longhorns lost in an ugly way. And my Cowboys lost in an ugly way.
Can I just say how weird it is to hear you talking about hockey with any kind of
with any kind of knowledge and interest?
I mean, don't get me wrong.
He's like, he appreciates it.
As one of the premier Stars fans, in my eyes, in the Metroplex, I'm not dissing it, but I'm like, oh, okay. This is weird because you have shown pretty much no interest in it.
Russo changed my life with that one game, man.
All right. Well, we're going to talk about none of that first. We're going to talk about the NBA because we are between 12 and 13 games in. Some teams are at 14, so we're starting to hit that quarter mark of the season already, which is weird because I feel like it just started a couple weeks ago, but I guess that's how often they play now. And let's start with the East, where the Bucks and the Celtics have gotten off to the hot start we kind of expected to them. Bucks are first at 10-2, Celtics 10-3, and then you have really kind of a cluster between 3 and 10. There's only a 2-game difference between the 3rd seed and the 10 seed early on in the season. The Hawks and the Cavaliers are tied at 3 and 4. Then the Wizards, featuring Bradley Beal and Kristaps Porzingis, in 5th. Raptors, your boys from Toronto, tied with the 76ers at 6-7. And then the Pacers, Knicks, and Heat wrap that up. And then not far behind them are the Bulls and the Nets. So the East looking a little weird. I think the biggest surprise for me is how good of a start the Cavaliers have gotten off to. I know I kind of picked them as a team to watch out for before the season started because I like how well they've built up their young core. But I just didn't expect them to be that good. But also maybe it just kind of shows how compact the middle part of the East is, right? Because you have the clear top teams and the Bucks and the Celtics. And then everybody else is pretty close together. I would say there should have been a standout. Everybody was expecting the 76ers to be that team. But so far they're not.
I mean, I think with the 76ers, especially, how many times have we actually said, like, it's their time to stand out? We've said that for like the last few years, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
Like, as soon as we saw that they were kind of getting a little team together, we've all like, and Embiid started playing up to par. We were all just kind of like, okay, the 76ers need to make a run now because they're not going to get really a chance to do it again. And I feel like they've had prime opportunities to do so, and they just don't follow through. The addition of Harden lost a lot of his cachet, so that's not as big as a deal as it used to be. It's when he went from the Mohawk to the dreads, man. That's when people were just like, this isn't Harden anymore. But in all seriousness, I think when we look at the East is always the interesting conference to me because you never really know who's going to come out of there. In the sense of like, when I say that, people are like, what do you mean, like the Bucks and stuff like that? No, what I mean is the East always. It doesn't stay as predictable as the West does. You know what I mean? Like, sure, it's been like a same team for like a couple years, but it kind of shifts. Like, it could be the Bucks, but then, we could look up and it could be the Raptors at some point, or we could look up and it could be, another team. And I think that, like you said about the Cavs right now, it's still surprising to people. So I think the East has always been that conference that's like, really, it's anybody's.
I think the East really has been, like, you always know the Bucks and Celtics are going to be at the top, but it's that 3 through 8 that has been kind of rotating through in the East, and that's what I think you can never really figure out is that 3 through 8. The West, I always thought is like there's so many good teams that any of them could jump up depending on if whether they get hot or, in the case of the Warriors, we'll get to them in a minute if they drop off.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so I think the East has always been that conference where I'm like, okay, you have your clear top contending teams, and then it's a real battle below maybe like 4 through 8, depending on the year. In the West, the number of games difference between the number 1 team and the 10 team, 3 games.
That is insane.
The Thunder are only 3 games behind Portland Trailblazers, the Trailblazers are 1.
Yeah.
The Trailblazers, the Nuggets, and the Jazz are all technically tied for first with their current record. The Suns and the Grizzlies are a half game back at 4-5.
Mm-hmm.
The Mavericks are only a game and a half back at 6th, and the Pelicans and the Clippers are 2 games back at 7-8. Kings 2.5 games back at 9. Thunder 3 games back at 10. So, yeah, I mean, if you look at that Western Conference, 1 through 8, I mean, that could be one of the best. Once you get through the play-in tournament, which I hate, obviously, we talked about that. But once you, if you just take that 1 through 8 right now, Trailblazers, Nuggets, Jazz, Suns, Grizzlies, Mavericks, Pelicans, Clippers, it may be one of the most stacked playoff groups that we've seen in a while.
Very much so.
There's
dude.
a lot of.
You
good
ran
teams.
down that list, and I was like, all these teams have talent right now.
Well, and the crazy thing is, I think the Jazz may be the most surprising team so far this season. They shipped off Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert, and they're 10-5.
Yeah.
That's nuts.
It's nuts because, I mean, I think in basketball, and I think it's easier to see this in basketball than football. Because in basketball, you trade away your star player or you give them up. Everybody automatically assumes, okay, well, their season's over. In football, you can still make it, and then, people will still be surprised, but it's less of like there's still these other pieces. In basketball, you have your star. And in the Jazz's case, they had their 2 stars. So
I think the Jazz right now are kind of like how the Mavs were when they won. They have Lauri Markkanen, who's having a pretty good season, but he's their top scorer, averaging 22 points a game.
Yeah.
Like, you look at people like Luka, who's putting up 30-plus points per game, and the Jazz don't have that. Now, what the Jazz do have is they have 6 scorers that are averaging double figures. So it's really yeah, Dirk was the star, and he was kind of your main scorer, but how many times in that 2011 season did they have big games from Jason Terry or Peja Stojakovic or JJ Barea? They would have these guys that would come in, and they would be key pieces, and they were a great team without any main stars.
yeah,
And I think that's what you have with the Jazz right now. Now the question is, come playoff time, you don't really have that guy that you can count on to pop off, right? Like when it comes down to stretching the playoffs, if you look at the rest of these teams, the Trailblazers are going to give it to Dame Lillard. Nuggets are going to give it to Jokic. Suns will give it to Booker. Grizzlies will give it to Ja. Mavs to Luka. Pelicans to Zion. And the Clippers have a couple of different ones. You could go with Kawhi or PG. They all have that guy, whereas I don't know if Markkanen is that level in terms of I know I'm going to give it to him in the clutch. And I think that's kind of maybe when these teams tend to collapse a little bit. Because even the Mavs in 2011, there's Dirk's going to get the ball.
yeah. But see, here's the thing. For one, running down the old 2011's Mavs roster, you're running through my childhood, man. So that was nostalgic for me. I hadn't heard the name J.J. Barea and Jason Terry in a minute. Here's the thing. The reason why I think that's actually an advantage for the Jazz is because I'm going to use a wrestling analogy, but it was like Jim Cornette was talking to a promoter in WCW about, okay, would you rather push this wrestler, Psycho Sid? Would you rather push Psycho Sid, or Sid Vicious, as he was known at the time, would you rather push Sid Vicious, who he can go out in front of this crowd and draw you $1 million, no problem? And they were like, yes, of course. And he said, or would you rather push Arn Anderson, who's a much better wrestler, but he's not going to draw $1 million instantly, but he'll draw you $500,000 weekly. Which one are you going for? And it's kind of the same thing with the Jazz, where it's like, sure, they don't have that Ja Morant, Luka, or they don't have. I stumbled on Luka's. Is it Doncic?
Yes, Luka Doncic.
So they don't have a Luka Doncic. They don't have a Ja Morant. But at the same time, I honestly like the vision of 6 people who can get buckets. If it's just like bare minimum of like double digits, I like that better than like, because guess what? You see how it's working out for them now. What do the Jazz aren't they? Did you say they're third right now?
I mean,
I know
they're technically tied for first, but they're
tied
listed
for first,
third.
but they're third right now.
Yeah,
Mavs are 6th.
Yeah.
So it shows that, like, you know, even though it does pay to have that top guy who you can get the ball to, it also sometimes doesn't. Because that defense is like, okay, shut down the top guy.
Yeah.
And with the Jazz, because that's honestly, that was the Spurs strategy. The Spurs, they had, no, don't get me wrong, they had Tim Duncan, Manu Ginobili, Tony Parker, and they won championships before Kawhi, so that's why I didn't really mention him. So they had people before him. But at the same time, were any of those guys like, quote unquote, superstars?
Maybe Tim Duncan.
Tim Duncan,
but he wasn't the. He never got. He was a very quiet superstar,
yes.
right? He never had the ego or anything,
no,
or the energy of another superstar. But I think in terms of stats, he was in ability. You could give him superstar. Status.
Yeah. But I think in response to what you mentioned earlier, which is very valid, I still think that it kind of benefits the Jazz to have like players who can consistently get double-digit points.
Yes, I just get concerned when it comes playoff time because there are times in a playoff game where your biggest guy, like how many times did Luka step up in a playoff game and put the team on his back because that's what was required?
Yeah, or we could look at, my favorite player, the guy that you hate, LeBron James. He did the same thing.
Well, why don't we take a look at LeBron James
of
and
course.
Some surprises in the West? Because the Lakers are still at 3-10, and I don't think it's surprising that they're not doing poorly. I think it is surprising that they're doing this poorly because you would think that they would, they didn't do great, but they were still competing for a play-in spot last season.
Yeah.
They're not even doing that right now. It is bad over there in LA.
Yeah.
And then the Warriors had a really tough. But see, like the Warriors, the way they're built, it seems like they live by the 3 and die by the 3.
Yeah.
And they're shooting. Like they don't really have that big interior presence. So if they go on a bad shooting streak, there's just nothing you can do.
Yeah.
Right?
The Warriors are like Kansas City to me. The football team, just like, because you know how Kansas City's known for, or at least when they won that Super Bowl, or at least years after that, they are known for putting up 50, 45,
Mm-hmm.
But what went unnoticed was that the other teams they were playing, they would get up to like 35 or 40 because that defense wasn't good.
Right.
So it's the same thing with the Warriors. Live by the 3, die by the 3. Defense is like, yeah, it's important, obviously, but like if we can outscore you to the point where you're trying to chase us, you'll get sloppy.
Yeah.
So that was the same mentality that Kansas City had. So I think Golden State, you can never count them out, but just right now, I just think that team has had so much internally go left that it's affecting their play on the court.
Yeah, it's quite possible we'll see a deal of maybe Draymond getting out of Golden State after everything they did. I'm still wondering if Los Angeles is going to be able to deal Westbrook at some point too. I don't think so, but yeah. So it's been an interesting NBA season so far. They're like I said, between 15 and 12 games in, depending on where you're at. Still a whole lot of season to go. And I will give this to LeBron. We are very nearly in the realm now of seeing history, as ESPN is projecting 40 games for LeBron to break the all-time scoring record. They're projecting February 2nd, 2023. So that'll be that'll be a cool moment. We'll give that. It's not every day you get to see that.
Nope.
as much as I don't hate I hate LeBron.
I know that's a blanket statement, but it's not.
I respect the skill, I respect the game, I respect what he's going to be done with his career at the end of the day, but yeah, there's things about LeBron James and the stuff he does off the court that I'm not a fan
Well,
of.
I mean, here's the thing, right? As here's how that goes. People were always like, we'll never see another Jordan. And we're right. I think it's wrong to look at LeBron James as like better than or as the next. I just look at him like we're never going to see another LeBron James because we're not.
That's true.
We're never going to see another Michael because we're undoubtedly no one is going to go 6 for 6 in title games. It's just not really going to happen like that again. And no one's going to be just that type of ruthless competitor again. Because, people were like, because LeBron's not Jordan, because LeBron is quitting games, which he has. I can't deny that. It's been there. But at the same time, nobody has been that much of a physical freak, and not even just physical. No one's been that much of a physical freak, but can do everything.
Yeah.
Can play every position, the 1 to the 5. He can give you dimes. He can give you points. He can give you defense. He can give you morale. He can give you everything.
And as good as Jordan was, he did not drag a G League team to the finals and win like LeBron did.
So
look.
So as much as there will never be another, Jordan, there will never be another LeBron.
True. Well, that's a look at your NBA season so far. We'll take a break, and when we come back, we will talk college football after week 2 of CFP rankings and a full weekend and misery for Mason Shepherd. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the main event.
Yeah.
You were waiting by the mic for a while.
Dude, I'm a wrestling fan. As many wrestlers as I've seen do that, it's nothing.
Ryan Baldwin here. Mason Shepherd still there.
Unfortunately, yeah.
And unfortunately for him, it's time to talk about college football.
Yep.
All right. So, what did you think of, first of all, what did you think of the CFP rankings from last week? Because I thought that it kind of went how I expected. I did think that TCU was going to get in at 4.
You did say Tennessee was going to get pushed back to at least 5, which they did.
I thought LSU honestly was going to be higher up than 7. I thought they were going to be 5 or 6.
They had lost some in the year, but I'm waiting on that Georgia game. I'm waiting on it.
No,
because LSU's already clinched that division of the SEC, so they're going.
It's going to be Georgia, LSU, and it's going to be Ohio State, Michigan the week before.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of this is going to get tallied up here. But let's go over the week that was, or the weekend that was. USC beat Colorado on Friday. No surprise to anybody there. Colorado has been atrocious. Georgia handily defeated Mississippi State. Again, no surprise there.
No.
Ohio State took down Indiana, which, that's sometimes a trap game. Indiana can fight you.
No, that's not a given.
Michigan beat Nebraska, and Nebraska has got to be one of the biggest fall from graces that I've seen in a while in terms of football lore. We were talking with Anthony Council prior to the show, and I was talking about, NCAA 96. There was a time when Nebraska was one of the best teams.
Even coming up 2012, they played Texas in the not 2012, but when Ndamukong Suh was there, they played Texas in the Big 12 championship game.
They were a solid team, and all of a sudden they have completely disappeared.
Yep.
All right, let's get to the one that's going to hurt your heart. Number 4, TCU, in a absolute garbage game down in Austin, still managed to clinch a victory 17-10 over the Longhorns. What do you think about the game? Because I know Quinn Ewers was getting a lot of flack for that game.
This is what happens when you have someone, even though he was a 5-star recruit, he hasn't played football in 3 years. And it shows. Now, I know a lot of people are like, you weren't saying that when they beat it. Shut up, because I know you're going to talk about Oklahoma. Be quiet. Let the one who knows sports talk about sports. Here's the thing. Quentin Ewers, that game was atrocious. It was a horrible game. He went 0 for 6 for a while. Man, watching that game, Texas's defense played well. We played extremely well. But I told my dad, we are not going to keep this up the entire game. We're going to get tired. And we eventually did. And then TCU started running. And then that running turned into throwing. And then the throwing turned into touchdowns. And then it turned into a loss. So our offense just wasn't clicking. Our offense was unfortunately too busy being on the wrong page. Xavier Worthy dropping passes. There's no excuse. We had Jatavian Sanders dropping passes. No excuse. It's just one of those things where the receivers, I don't think they were ready to play. And they shut down Bijan, who my parents affectionately call Mustard.
Because Dijon.
Yeah. Okay. They shut down Bijan to 11 carries, 22 yards. I think at the halfway point of the third quarter, that stat was brought up, and it was kind of mind-boggling. Texas's offense just could not get going, and that was in part because I'm not taking anything away from TCU's defense, but I think also like Texas's offense, those drops costed us points. There's no doubt about that. And like the game was low scoring. So it wasn't like anybody reached like 35 or anything or whatever. But at the end of the day, Texas with that scoop and score, who knows if those passes would have been caught? Who knows? Texas might have won that game. It would have been an ugly win, but it would have still been a win. And we didn't win, so we're not going to the Big 12 championship game. I honestly don't know who else would be going. Because in the Big 12, one of those where if it's like no one measures up, then it's just like, okay, you're the Big 12 champs at this point.
I don't know about that. I thought it was still 1 and 2 play.
I could be just speculating because that's how I feel. So
the Big 12 right now, Kansas State's still 5 and 2 and 7 and 3 overall. So it looks like it'd come down to either Kansas State or Oklahoma State versus TCU.
Kansas State. Oklahoma State keeps losing games. Remember when Kansas was like really good? Now they're back to where they normally
3
are.
3 and 4, yeah.
It was good to be a Jayhawk for that limited amount of time.
Tennessee handily defeated Missouri 66-24. Number 6 Oregon lost to 25 Washington, and I imagine that
did not surprise me.
Imagine that takes them right out of any CFP chances. That loss, right
obviously,
there.
Yeah, dude. What did I tell you? Washington can take wins off of you.
Yeah, once you get down to these kind of later in the year conference games, you got to be ready to go every single time because there's teams that'll take a game off if you could come in unprepared and not ready to go.
Plus, Oregon's overrated in my opinion. They always are because they don't get the job done.
No. LSU barely beat out Arkansas 13-10. Bama squeaked one out against Ole Miss, which is a nice consolation prize.
Yeah. It's a nice consolation prize for knowing you not making it into the college football playoffs.
And Clemson recovered from their defeat last week to win 31-16. Other than that, let's see. Arizona upset UCLA 34-28. And I say upset again. They were number 12. They didn't really have a chance to get into the CFP unless like everybody lost out for the rest of the season. Boston College beat North Carolina State. Again, I don't know if I would call that an upset because North Carolina State's always that like middle of the top 25 team somehow that never makes it, that always loses and somehow still is in the top 25.
Yep.
UCF beat Tulane. Poor Tulane. They had moved all the way up to number 17.
Yeah.
And now will drop back down. Kansas State over Baylor, Notre Dame over Navy, Purdue upset Illinois, Florida State over Syracuse, and Vanderbilt upset Kentucky. Okay, so my question to you, Mason Shepherd.
Of course.
Because the new CFP rankings will be released tomorrow, and this is the part of the year where it's fun because we actually get to like speculate instead of like actually reading off the rankings and arguing. We get to speculate and guess. Does the CFP value an undefeated record over the fact that TCU had a bad win and Tennessee had a good win?
Yes.
You
They
think
would
so?
they would choose an undefeated record every time. It looks better on paper. It looks better for sponsors. And let's be clear, right? Tennessee had a better showing, but TCU is undefeated.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that TCU being undefeated outranks that just because media and television are always looking for Cinderella stories, especially in college football. College sports is where Cinderella stories make incredible headlines, which headlines mean incredible amounts of viewership, and viewership means an incredible amount of money. And while putting Tennessee in there would be good because Tennessee's never been either, that would mean that an undefeated team wouldn't have a chance to, I don't know, maybe go on an undefeated winning streak and beat top like SEC or Big Ten teams. They're not going to pass that up.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, especially with all the deals that the Big 12 and ESPN have had to hash out since Texas and Oklahoma announced that they were leaving in a couple years, I think ESPN would love to have a Big 12 representative in the CFP. So that's for more of a media standpoint and television business. From a football perspective, I still think TCU should be in because even, like, look, a win is a win no matter how ugly it is, just like how a loss is a loss no matter how pretty it is, quote unquote. So it's kind of like what you talked about, moral victories. You know, yeah, they may be great, but they don't go on the scoreboard or they don't go on your stat sheet. A loss may be ugly, doesn't go on. I mean, a win may be ugly, doesn't mean it goes on your stat sheet. So, I think that they will value that TCU's undefeated over Tennessee's performance.
So
They will. So basically,
then
it's record against performance. They care more about record.
So then, do you agree with me that right now it's going to shake out basically the same top four: Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, TCU, Tennessee still 5, and then LSU moving up into 6 after Oregon lost?
Yes.
All right. Well, we both agree on that. And next week's games, I don't think it's going to be anything too terribly interesting in terms of like high-profile games because obviously Week 13 is going to be Ohio State versus Michigan, and that is going to be
they're going to say the big
one.
stuff for Thanksgiving week.
That's going to be a difficult one for the college football playoff committee, unless one of the team blows the other one out. Like if it's a close game, do you take one of them out? Because I don't think you do.
No, you don't.
Unless Tennessee like blows out their last couple opponents. Well, maybe, but like Tennessee lost to Georgia.
And that was an ugly loss.
Yeah, but this is I don't envy being on the CFP.
Me neither.
It's tough when there's 4 teams. And yeah, they're going to expand it to 12. But right now, it's going to be
You can't take Ohio State or Michigan out.
It's going to be a tough week 13 and 14 because 14 is going to be the conference championships and all that stuff. And that could be nightmare as well.
Yeah.
So next week, Illinois versus Michigan, maybe a little bit of a trap game. You got to be on your toes, like we said, but it is in Ann Arbor.
Yeah.
TCU on the road at Baylor.
Maybe. Baylor can take a win off of you, so.
Yeah, you got, like, as we talked about, you got to be ready to play every single week. Anything else kind of interesting? Georgia at Kentucky. Kentucky just lost, so I doubt that Georgia's going to have much problem with that. Ohio State at Maryland. Again, that's another one that it shouldn't be much of an issue.
Yeah.
And Tennessee at South Carolina. So, now USC does have a chance to put another quality win on there because they'll be playing UCLA. I don't think that's going to be they would need a lot of help still.
They would
need a lot of help. They might be able to sneak into a top 6 if LSU loses to Georgia in the conference playoffs or the conference championships, but I don't think it's going to be enough to get to top 4 unless TCU completely blows up and loses
blows
out.
Everything. Yeah.
No. All right. And Oregon versus Utah. This would have been an interesting one if Oregon hadn't lost last week because it would have been a 13-ranked Utah. So that could have been another one that makes things interesting. But
I think it'll still be an interesting game. But at the same time, like you said, it doesn't have the same cachet that it used to.
And that's a West Coast game, so that's a 9:30 start. That one's going to go late into the evening.
Yeah, I don't know anybody who's going to watch Oregon and Utah at 9:30, at least here.
All right, so that'll do it there for your NCAA football look. We're going to go ahead and take another break. And when we come back, it'll be time for the NFL. Welcome back to the main event.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ryan Baldwin here. Mason Shepherd there.
Yeah.
Yeah. What, you don't like my yap?
It's the way that you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, NFL.
Oh my God.
What a freaking weekend this was. It's
Still
the freaking
disappointed.
weekend, baby. I'm about to have me some fun. Wait, no, are we still on an R. Kelly moratorium for music?
I think that's a thing we should always be on.
Oh, okay. My bad. Panthers beat the Falcons on Thursday Night Football in another Thursday night matchup that is just not any good.
See, what did I tell you? What did I tell you about Atlanta? Because you were like, man, I don't know. Atlanta may be on something. What did I tell you about Atlanta?
That
They are not
that they're
worth the hype, Ryan.
that they're bad.
Yeah, that's what I told you. They're not worth the hype.
And that was the Thursday night matchup. And I mentioned this on Twitter. I actually like having the overseas game because that means that there's always a football game on the entire Sunday.
True.
You get your 8:30 start, and it goes like basically right up until noon. So you get NFL all the way through the day.
Yeah.
It was the first ever game in Germany.
Munich,
How
Germany.
about that? Yeah, at the home of Bayern Munich, which was kind of cool, but apparently also the field was not really conducive to football. Did you see everybody slipping and sliding?
Yep.
The Buccaneers did win that one 21-16.
Boo.
The craziest game by far was the Vikings over the Bills 33-30 in overtime.
I watched the last part of that, and I was like the last part of that game, and I was like, I don't know what's going on as far as like we talked about before we came back from the break with Josh Allen.
Mhm.
But my God, the way he threw that game away. Jesus.
Interception in the end zone, and then fumbling on a quarterback sneak. That is a big time yikes, dog.
Yeah. Yeah, especially against a team like Minnesota, who,
Now
You know,
8-1.
you know what?
Are they for real? Because this is like, it's basically the same team as last year, right? The Vikings, and they're not
Pretty much, yeah.
Do-
Nobody's like a standout
Are
except
we-
for like Adam Thielen.
and Justin Jefferson.
Justin
And
Jefferson.
Dalvin
How
Cook.
could I forget Justin Jefferson? Did you see that catch?
Yeah, one-handed to steal away an interception.
That was better than the Odell catch to me.
And Dalvin Cook is a good running back too. But
Dalvin, yeah.
But you look at this team, and it's basically the same team from last year. But
Yeah.
you can, I guess, say that because they were they're in the same one as Green Bay, that they have a tough time getting into the playoffs. But
Yeah, I mean, I would because that's usually what keeps them out.
they were 8-9. They lost to Cincinnati, Arizona, Cleveland. They lost to the Vikings or to the Cowboys in Cooper Rush.
Yep.
They lost to Baltimore in overtime, San Francisco, Detroit, Los Angeles, Green Bay. So I guess they did play some pretty good teams.
Yep.
And then, they didn't make the playoffs because Green Bay they weren't good enough to make the wild card, and Green Bay took the division.
Yeah.
So now,
I'm saying-
without Green Bay, they've got a clear shot at not only winning the division, but possibly being one of the top seed in the NFC, the Vikings of all teams.
I mean, if we're being honest, long time coming.
Yeah.
Because the Vikings have always been a team where they don't suck. They're just mediocre. But they're not losers. They're just they are losers, but like mediocre.
Yeah. They'll
Also,
hit the first round of the
is Mike
playoffs.
Zimmer still the head coach? Or did he not get replaced? Like, I don't think he got fired. He just got moved.
Kevin O'Connell.
Yeah.
Maybe just a mutual parting of the ways. Lions beat the Bears. Go Lions, yay. Titans beat the Broncos, and Russell Wilson continues to struggle and continues to be possibly the biggest quarterback offseason flop in NFL history.
No.
Who's the biggest quarterback offseason flop?
Brock Osweiler.
Okay.
70 million, Ryan.
240 million for Russell.
But he had talent and won a Super Bowl. Think about this: 70 million to a quarterback who's proved nothing.
That might be a good sports adjacent topic here.
That would be actually.
Chiefs beat the Jaguars. Not surprising. Dolphins 7-3 over the Browns.
Okay, so do you feel like the Dolphins are going to take the AFC East?
I do, because I think Jeff Wilson Jr. was a stud basically an accidental find out of San Francisco. And if you looked at the Miami offense, you're kind of like, okay, Raheem Mostert's all right.
He was better in San Fran when he had that spotlight on him.
But Jeff Wilson Jr. has come in so far, and he has been a really good running back. And that kind of just shored up the one question mark that you kind of had for the Miami offense, and they've looked really good.
Because Miami hasn't had a mainstay running back since, what was it?
Ricky Williams?
Yeah, it was Ricky, because I was thinking more like no Sean Moreno, but like he came from Denver.
Yeah.
So, and he was older. So yeah, it was Ricky. It was Ricky and what was it? Ronnie Brown. So it was Ricky Williams and Ronnie Brown. So they had that 1-2 punch.
Yeah, and I mean Mostert's a good backup too, or that it's a good 1-2 with Wilson Jr. and Mostert in there. So
yeah,
I think the Dolphins are primed to take the AFC East, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but they're gonna have to beat the Jets. They're gonna have to beat the Jets to get there.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, what a year! The Giants are still somehow 7-2. They managed to win yet another close game against the Texans.
Yeah,
win.
But I mean, unthankfully, it was Houston.
You know, they have not had a double-digit win.
Houston?
No, the Giants. The Giants. They have not had a double-digit win. They beat the Titans by a point, Panthers by 3, lost to the Cowboys, beat the Bears by 8, the Packers by 5, Ravens by 4, Jaguars by 6, and the Texans by 8. I don't know how, but they're never blowing teams out, but they keep winning somehow.
You know what? But see, that's what I value more. You know, I value a team like, yeah, sure, I may not blow you out, but like, I'm still going to win because I can close. I wish Dallas would adopt that.
It's going to make for a very interesting Thanksgiving game between the two coming up.
Yes, it will.
Steelers beat the Saints. Kenny Pickett getting some valuable experience, I guess. Saints are still running with Andy Dalton, so kind of a,
So they're the Aints right now. Yeah, you can go ahead and say it.
Kind of a who cares game on there.
Yeah.
The Colts, Jeff Saturday's first game as a head coach, and they pick up a win against the Raiders. The Raiders are
tragic, sad,
all of the above.
Yeah.
They spent how much for Devontae Adams and only to go 2-7?
Yeah.
You think Devontae Adams is looking at Green Bay right now going like, man, as bad as Green Bay is, we could probably have won if I was still there.
Yeah. I mean, because here's the thing. As bad as Green Bay is, and they are bad, even though we'll get to us in a minute, the Raiders are not going to go that much further. Like, let's rip that Band-Aid off now.
Yeah.
For all my Raiders fans, which if you are a Raiders fan, you should be ashamed of yourself. They're not going to go much further than where they're at. So I don't think that was. I mean, he made the decision. Let's be real. He made the decision for the money anyway. But I just yeah,
it's tough. It's
tough
right
being
now.
a Raiders fan because you want to talk. People talk about us as Cowboys fans. It's Raiders fans who are like, this is going to be our year. It never is.
Never is.
Because they're the Raiders. What did you expect?
Cardinals beat the Rams 27-17. No Kyler Murray. It was Colt McCoy in for.
I will always show love and respect to my Texas alumni, Colt McCoy.
DeAndre Hopkins is back. 10 receptions, 98 yards. Pretty good.
Yeah.
I think the Cardinals They're 4-6, but they might sneak into a wild card and ruin like a top seeds day, depending on if they can figure it out. I'm not saying they're going to like challenge the Eagles for a Super Bowl title.
No.
But they might sneak into that 7 spot and ruin a like a second or a third seeds day.
I could see that.
And then the 49ers beat the Chargers, and I can't figure out what the Chargers are doing because on paper they should be a solid
He's like,
team.
I can't figure out what the Chargers are doing, but I just know it's not working.
It's not working. Like, they're 5-4. And I guess you could say, I mean, the 49ers are 5-4 as well, and they picked up Christian McCaffrey, who is arguably the best running back in the NFL, if not one of, maybe not the best. But the Chargers have Austin Eckler. Justin Herbert has been a solid quarterback. I mean, it's just they can't figure out how to bring
I
home
think the
games.
Chargers, because they've been on the upswing for a little bit, I think they deserve like a down year. Just one year where the Chargers fans are like, oh man, we're not doing so good.
All right, and then that brings us to the tragedy in Green Bay.
Can we just skip over this?
No.
Dang it. It's worth the shot, ladies and gentlemen.
I
feel you.
As much as I wish we could, we need to talk about it at least for a little bit. The Cowboys lose in overtime. They blow a 28-14 lead in the fourth quarter and lose in OT.
Do you want to start or you want me to start?
Well, I mean, let me just go ahead by reminding everybody that I did not buy into. Thank you. I did not buy into the Cowboys at all. I made a promise to myself, and I told you, like, I'm not buying into the Cowboys this season because I've been hurt too many times, etc. So this, to me, was a classic Cowboys game and an example of why I am not going to buy into the Cowboys, right? Because they do this. They go into against a team who lost 5 straight.
Yep.
Who are absolutely reeling. You are up by 14 in the fourth quarter. And then you lose in overtime after winning the coin flip, right? Like teams that win the coin flip in overtime win a absurd amount of the time, percentage-wise. They couldn't get anything done.
Nope.
Dak looked aggressively average in the first half. I think he looked bad.
Yeah.
But he looked better in the second, so it averages out to aggressively average overall. And this is, I said this on Twitter as well, he is an above average quarterback making elite level money. And when I say above average, you got to remember, if there's 16 starting quarterbacks in the NFL, that puts above average at 10 to 12, 10 to 13-ish, right? Maybe, let's call it 11 to 13. That's not a bad quarterback.
No.
He's not a bad quarterback. But he is not consistent enough to be elite. When he's hot and he's playing well, he plays at an elite level. When he's bad, it is bad. The decision-making is bad. The reads, bad. Throw accuracy, bad. How many times did he throw one and it's just like in the dirt at CeeDee Lamb's feet? And it drives me nuts to see that Jerry could have had him for much less money if he had just given him less money. But now we've got so much money tied up in Dak, and don't even get me started on Zeke.
And no longer in his peak, Zeke.
No longer in his peak. And I mean, like, I don't know about you, but after watching that backfield, I would be fine running Pollard and Davis as a backfield. I had no problems with that.
They were honestly the best parts of that offense for me.
CeeDee Lamb had a good game. CeeDee
had a good game, but still my favorite part of the offense was Pollard and Davis.
Pollard had 115 yards on 22 carries and a touchdown. Malik Davis was averaging 7.6 a carry, 38 yards on 5 carries.
That's my point.
I mean, it's a good backfield.
It's a great backfield.
And that's without the guy you're paying $40 million a year to, or whatever. I think it's 40.
Instead of moving forward and getting 2 yards, and they were getting like 6 to 7.
So, and the other thing that, I know that the Cowboys had some injuries, but here's the problem: trade deadline's gone.
Yeah.
And you missed your opportunity to go get a big time defensive tackle or linebacker to help out with the run game.
Yeah.
So whatever you've got now, you're stuck with it.
Plus, I don't like using injuries as an excuse. Every team goes through injuries.
Sure, but I mean the Packers ran all over the Cowboys, and this is one of those things where I'm like, okay, all these teams are looking at game film now, going like, look, if we can run on the Cowboys, we can win. What did the Eagles do? They ran that read option with Jalen Hurts, and they took Parsons out of the game, and they ran all over us.
It's the same. Green Bay did the same thing. Parsons was not as all over the field as he usually was. I didn't really hear his name called throughout this game.
No, I mean, Parsons had a very quiet 7 total tackles.
Yeah.
And 1 tackle for loss. No sacks. And not even a quarterback hit.
Yeah.
So
they neutralized Micah.
Yes, and that's one of the things. And well, I think it doesn't help too that Leighton Vander Esch went out for a little bit. And I'm like, with Vander Esch out, you basically have to drop Micah Parsons back as a linebacker, like an actual linebacker, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, when you can run the ball effectively, the Cowboys defense, when they were good, I mean, they're still pretty good, but they're at their best in passing downs, and when they know it's a passing down, right? Because you've got so much talent.
Yeah.
On the defensive end and outside and the defensive line to get to the quarterback. If you can run the ball and keep the Cowboys defense guessing, it's pretty clear that they don't guess right a lot of the times, and they can't stop the run.
Pretty much. You're right about that, yeah.
If you look at Rodgers, his numbers weren't astounding, but he was efficient. 14 for 20 for 224 yards. He's averaging 11 yards a completion, and he was 14 to 20. That's what, 70%?
70.
And 3 touchdowns. So
let me see. You say 14 to 20. I do.
I'm pretty sure it's 70.
You can keep going.
Yeah, so it's one of those it's one of those games where I'm like, this is exactly why you cannot buy into the Cowboys as as a serious contender.
And I don't think that anybody really should have anyway, just because we have seen Dallas in a lot of unfavorable situations where they've put themselves in those unfavorable situations. And this was really no different. We put ourselves here, and it was a rough game to watch because those 2 interceptions were awful. We really gave them 14, if I'm being honest, but we definitely gave them 7 to make it 14. And then we just never got the ball rolling to the point where we could be comfortable. It was 28-14. Aaron Rodgers is a lot of things, but a man you can keep down just by scoring 2 touchdowns is not one of them.
It's the same thing with like Tom Brady, right? Every time you look at him with the ball in his hands in any kind of like close game, you're like, oh no, here we go again.
Yeah, when Dallas didn't close it in regulation, I said we're going to lose this game because I don't trust, for one, Dallas's offense to get it done in overtime, and I don't trust that when we give the ball to Aaron that we are not going to be able to get the ball back. Because when they threw that 30 yards, it's always 30 yards up the middle. When they threw that 30-yard pass up the middle, I was like, okay, we're done.
Yeah.
They can easily just kick a field goal here and be done with it. They didn't even have to get closer. They could have just kicked it from where they were. Just ended the game.
What'd you think about going forward on 4th down?
Because
versus
here's the thing. I think no matter what it was, we were going to get the same result. If we punted the ball,
it's a 53-yard field goal.
Yeah.
You could have gone for a 53-yarder. That's well within Maher's range.
Yes, it is. And I think McCarthy got overzealous. But I think, with Maher in that field goal, I think McCarthy wanted to take a chance. And we had done well on 4th down up until that point. So he took a chance, and it didn't pay off. The play call was wrong. And then, we didn't execute, and then we lost. And then, it was. I think I would have gone for the field goal as a coach because here's the reason why I would go for the field goal. That Aaron Rodgers is going to take them down the field. So why not make sure that you've scored so when they score, because I think if it was a field goal, only a touchdown would in the game.
In the game, yeah. If
Because
they
if they
kicked
kicked the field goal, then they wouldn't.
you'd go back and forth, yeah.
But at least if you kicked the field goal, you would know that they have to score a touchdown to win versus they can get down here and kick a field goal and beat us.
And what has been the better aspect of our team all season long so far?
I would say
the defense. So if I'm going to
specifically red zone and passing downs.
If I'm going to, we already had a big sack earlier in the game.
Yes,
where
we did.
One of his 2 sacks was in that end zone or red zone and kept him from scoring a touchdown. So my thought process is I'm going to hang my hat on the better of the 2 sides of the football.
Yep.
And say, you know what? If we keep them down to 3, then we can at least possibly, even if the offense stalls out, maybe between their drive and our drive, we can waste enough time where we can get out of here with a tie.
Yeah.
And going for it on 4th down there, I'm not going to say it's the outright wrong decision, because I'm sure analytics are going to look at it and say, you should go for it at this amount of time. And I think that in that situation, the analytics is not necessarily wrong, but there's a time and place for the numbers, and there's a time and place for the gut, right?
Yeah, and I think, once again, he went for it from the perspective of, and I can understand it.
Yeah.
Do we convert a 4th down, get the ball and score and end it, or do we put the ball back in Rodgers' hands? Because you know he's going to lead them down the field. But now you've got yourself in a 50-50 proposition. Because obviously the latter half of that 50 is what we experienced. We didn't convert, and he got the ball back anyway. Versus kick a field goal, you convert, but he goes down and scores. The third one, which is obviously the one we wanted, was we convert, we score, we win. That obviously didn't happen. So when dealing in those situations, especially when you're dealing with Aaron Rodgers, you got 3 options. You kick a field goal, and you hope your defense keeps them at least to a field goal. If not, obviously the main hope is nothing. The second is what we went with. You go for it and try to convert. That way you keep the ball out of his hands, but you fail. So the ball gets put in his hand anyway and you win. Or option C, you go for it, but you convert and your drive is maintained. Obviously that didn't happen. We went with option B and we lost.
Here's the thing about even converting, though. Even if you convert the 4th down, it's not like you're like, oh, okay, well, we converted the 4th down. Now we're guaranteed to get a touchdown. No, you might end up going 3 plays, no yards on the next. Whoa, bless me. On the next set of downs.
Yeah, but
and
at least
have to kick a field goal.
But because it was 4th and 4, if they would have picked up that 4, they would have knocked it from like 53 to
48, 49.
Yeah, 48, 49.
At that point, though, I'm like, a 4 yards at that length at a pro level, I don't think it matters. College level, I would say that is definitely something that is that you need to take a look at.
Yeah.
But at the pro level, for a guy like Maher, the difference between 48 and 53, I don't think is that much.
I think it's all in a kicker's perception.
Yeah. Anyway, the Cowboys couldn't figure it out, end up losing, and now they have to play the Vikings.
In Minnesota.
In Minnesota. Returning to the scene of the crime from last year. Is it in Minnesota? It is in Minnesota. Do they play Cooper Rush just for the mind games?
I had a feeling you were going to bring that up.
It's a funny thing to think about, though, just because imagine the cesspool of comments if we go in and lose this game.
Oh, put Cooper Rush back in.
Yeah, just Cooper Rush beat the Vikings last year.
Yeah,
you get back out of here.
Yeah, Cooper Rush also got us blown out.
Maybe it's a bit early, but I think the next 2 games are the pivotal point of the Cowboys season.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Because you have to play the Vikings, and then you're on short rest against the Giants. And again, the Giants are going to be on short rest, but they only play the Lions.
Yeah,
going into Thanksgiving. If you put up 2 L's between the Vikings and the Giants, you're going to have a tough time getting into the wild card. You might get lucky because the rest of the NFC right now is looking kind of meh.
Yeah.
But you're going to have If you lose to the Vikings and the Giants, I would say your chances of making it as the NFC East winners right out.
Yeah.
I don't think you. I think the way the Eagles are looking right now, it is overzealous to think that you're going to be able to beat the Eagles. So I think
we're not close to being in that territory.
So I think that this is a pivotal point in the Cowboys season in terms of even making the playoffs.
Yeah.
Because I guess let's go ahead and take a look at the rest of the NFC standings since we're making our way that way.
Downtown.
Making our way downtown, faces passing them homebound. Right now, they would be in a wild card again, simply because the rest of the NFC is so bad, right? So 1 through 7 get in the NFC.
Yeah.
And the Eagles would be number 1.
Of course.
The Vikings would be number 2 as a division winner.
Okay.
Seahawks would be number 3.
Yeah.
And the Buccaneers would be number 4 as your division winners.
Gross.
That would mean the Giants 5 and the Cowboys 6 with the 49ers 7. And they do have a 2-game advantage on the Commanders and the Packers and the Falcons and the Cardinals, but that could all change. Like if you lose 2 and end up going 6 and 5, there's every chance that some of these teams can catch up.
Yeah.
So I think they did a good enough job with Cooper Rush in to possibly hold on to a wild card spot.
I would agree with that.
But losing these 2 games is going to make that difficult.
We can't afford to go on a losing streak. We cannot afford it, but we'll see what happens. Dallas can bounce back or they can get bounced on.
Yep. All right, there's your NFL look. We'll take another break, one more, and then when we come back to sports adjacency. Welcome back to the main event. Ryan Baldwin here, Chuckles McGee over there.
Ryan's a Navy SEAL.
Oh, God. All right, sports adjacency, not whatever crap Mason's making up with here.
Fair enough.
Starting with Kyrie, he officially finished his minimum number of games for suspension on Saturday. It was 5 of 5 minimum. He is not yet reinstated because he has his list of things that he needs to do.
Which he will not do, except like a couple of them that he's already done.
And he was dropped by Nike officially.
Yeah.
So this is not going away anytime soon. It's not like he's going to just serve his 5 games and free pass.
If he had just, and we're not going to beat a dead horse here, folks, but it would have like not been this big a deal had he apologized.
Yeah.
And just gotten it over with. But was sincere, because I don't mean get it over with just to be, you know what I mean.
Right.
But if he would have just apologized, we would not be having this conversation. But he didn't want to, so we're having this conversation.
In a similar vein, the Mitchell thing. Did you read the statement?
Yeah, I did. I very much did. Yeah.
I didn't want to read it because it is pretty graphic.
It's pretty graphic. Also, I think it's best if we were going to read it that I read it.
I would just rather not have
no.
Read it. But we're talking about Mitchell Miller, the NHL was going to be an NHL player who was drafted by the Coyotes back in 2018, I think it was.
Yeah,
we said, and then was it 2018? I don't remember.
Isn't he 20 now?
He was drafted by the Coyotes, and then a story came out how he used to horrifically bully a classmate, a black classmate
for 6 years
with learning disabilities for 6 years, and this has come out. And the Bruins tried to sign him last week, it's like last week, earlier, a little bit, like a week and a half ago.
Yeah,
and obviously received a bunch of backlash, and the hockey commissioner even came out and said, "I don't know that this guy will ever play for the NHL." And we talked about it last week on, does this guy, deserve to think at some point that maybe he's changed, whatever.
Yeah.
And then you read the statement put out by the kid he bullied.
Isaiah.
And that made me go, because I was one of those guys that was like, maybe he does some work. It appears he's doing some work with,
groups
and stuff, and maybe he's trying to turn over a new leaf. And then you just read the statement that Isaiah put out, and it is just
Sickening.
It is sickening, and it is definitely one of those ones where you read what and how Mitchell tried to allegedly, according to Isaiah, contact him on Snapchat and ask if they could be friends, and it had nothing to do with hockey. I'm like, okay, you're trying to cover your own butt at that point.
Yeah,
And it seems so insincere now, everything. And Isaiah said, well, where's the proof of you working with it? And he didn't offer any proof. And so, yeah, this is one of those ones where I'm like, look, this kid is not fit to be playing anytime. And then, you know what? It is. I want to say it's a shame, because it kind of is, because I feel like everybody deserves a chance to right themselves if possible. But obviously, he's not there yet.
Nope.
And he may never be there. And
Nope.
And I say it's a shame for him, but it's also a shame for Isaiah, because he's dealing with the backlash of people that are just idiots who are now contacting Isaiah on social media about all this and calling him slurs again. Like, it's just a continuation of it because all this came out. So that's the bigger shame, is that now he has to deal with this crap again.
Yeah, because he has to deal with this crap again because people are upset that this poor, innocent little white man doesn't get to live his dream. Boo, boo-hoo. Look, here's the reality. If they read that statement, because there is stuff in there that if it had happened to me, I don't know if I'd be sitting here answering these questions versus making a phone call to an attorney and claiming self-defense. Because it's one of those things where it's like the stuff that he went through was just, it was ghastly. It was like, we joked before we came on the segment about like a movie. This is like something you would picture in like one of those high school 1980s, 90s, early 2000s films where the nerd gets picked on relentlessly. And
even worse than that.
That's what I'm saying. Like, it's almost like this didn't really happen when you read it, but we all know it did.
Yeah, it's one of those ones where you read it and you're like, I can't imagine a human being would inflict this on another human being.
Not even just that. I can't imagine that this human being had other human beings around him condoning this.
True.
And saying nothing. School officials included. I'm not just talking about his little punk friends. And here's the thing. How can that kid, and this is why I would agree with him never being allowed to play in the NHL. Because for 6 years, Mitchell Miller went home. And he had a mirror there. Obviously, everybody's got a mirror in their house. He went home and looked himself in the mirror. He was probably doing his hair, as usual. And he looked himself in the mirror, got himself ready for the day, or took himself to bed that night and thought, I'm doing something great. Or maybe he didn't think about it at all. Either way, it's bad. Because he went home and saw himself as not immoral for what he was doing to this black kid. And it's disgusting. It's pathetic. And it's one of the things that here's the thing about it, right? Here's the thing about it. There is a difference. Okay, I'm going to use this example, right? So Liam Neeson, right? Everybody knows the Taken films, the phone call, I've got a specific set of skills, whatever. Did you hear about what he did around like 2017? He had a friend who got assaulted, that's the word I'm going to use, by a black man, and he's Irish, folks, so he had an Irish weapon. It's a billy club, but it's called something different, and he had a billy club with him, and he was walking the streets of LA in neighborhoods he doesn't really visit to or anybody, looking for a black man, not the black man who assaulted his friend, but he was using slurs and looking for a black man to beat to death with that stick or billy club. And ever since then, I've boycotted Liam Neeson in my own world. Other people can watch him. I just won't, because it's not Mark Wahlberg being a part of hate crimes as a kid and then growing up and kind of realizing what I did was horrible and that shouldn't be a reflection of who I am, because that's not me. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if Mark has had that internal, realization, but I would hope so. Liam Neeson, just like this kid, felt that it was okay to do this. Felt that it was okay to even think about doing it. That's where I have a problem, because that's when you cross over, like we said, that's where you cross over being someone who's ignorant and you're being racially, you're bullying someone, you're being hard on someone, you're hurting someone, to like, dude, that's evil. You're being, and I'm not here to label people, ladies and gentlemen, on this show, because we talk about sports and sports adjacency. And I'm not here to label people and, defame or slander people. I'm just here to talk facts. Because when I open my mouth, you can trust that it's the truth. Except if you're Ryan. So here's the thing. If you do that, and like think about, like I said, we're not going to go into specifics here, but some of the stuff from that statement, think about that. Imagine if that was your child that had to go through that, or imagine if that was you or your significant other. You would be like, that's evil, that's heartless, that's cruel. Just because this white boy is not allowed to play hockey and he can't live his dream because of something that happened when they were in middle school doesn't mean that these people, which they were going to anyway, because there are some set of people who don't care. But that doesn't mean that these people should just, oh my God, get over it. What are you, you're calling him the R word and, just all this stuff, insulting him because this kid can't live his dream and play hockey. Good. He deserves not to, because he should pay for what he did. And in some places, he would pay more physically than mentally and financially. But he should be lucky he's not having to do that. Because that statement was heart-wrenching. It was heartbreaking. It was disgusting to read about all the stuff that this boy had to go through for 6 years uninterrupted. Nobody stood up for him. No official stood up for him. And then this kid has the audacity to message him years later, trying to... And you remember, because when we had talked about this last week, you and I had both assumed that, not that they had really made up, but, this guy was saying that they had made up. So you and I had assumed maybe there was a chance that was true and that, they had maybe talked it out. Not even remotely close to true. It's all publicity. And it's sickening to think that there are some people in this world that would that value more that some kid doesn't have to be punished for what he did years ago over the fact that a human being, a normal human being, he didn't do anything to anybody but exist. Got racial slurs thrown at him every day. Got beat up every day. Got food thrown in his face every day. Got spat on. That doesn't mean anything to them because this little white man can't play hockey. It's sickening, man.
Yeah.
And I'm tired. I'm tired of people prioritizing one thing over the other. Brett Favre stole money. Yeah, I'm getting fired up. I deserve to be. Brett Favre stole money from poor people from his own state, from the government. He stole money to build his daughter a volleyball gym. That gets covered for 2 weeks. 2 weeks. But we talk about a black man's personal business. And Lord knows, folks, I am not talking about Kyrie or Kanye. But Ime Udoka, we talk about his personal business for over a month. And all he did was cheat on his significant other. Now, I would understand if it was with a minor, but it wasn't. He cheated on his significant other and we covered that on sports programming for over a month. It's not like he killed anybody or did anything else. He just made poor judgment and was a jerk to his significant other and made bad decisions and was, not being fair and not having integrity. I'm not covering for what he did by any means, but take that, right? Infidelity. Take that. Brett Favre stole from thousands, hundreds and thousands. I don't want to go millions because I don't know the exact statistics, but he stole from hundreds and thousands of poor Mississippi families to build his daughter a volleyball gym. And I say his daughter because of the school she was going to. He stole money so that's what I mean. Not specifically her, like a gym at their house, but you know what I mean. Like the school she was going to, he wanted to build them a new volleyball gym because his daughter was playing there. And he used the money from poor Mississippi families, stealing money off of literally stealing money off of people's plates and tables. Brett Favre did that. He did that. We covered that for 2 weeks. And people don't care. They don't seem to care that people had money taken off of their plates, out of their mouths. There are people in Mississippi who couldn't buy clean water, food, clothes for their children, books, school supplies, because Brett Favre had to build his daughter a volleyball gym. And nobody cared about that on ESPN for more than 2 weeks. But Emi Udoka got covered for a month over infidelity with someone who was of an adult age. Again, if it was a minor, that'd be a crime. That's different. But someone who was of an adult age. This kid, Mitchell Miller. And the reason I brought those up, ladies and gentlemen, is because I'm sick and tired of this. I'm tired of it. And I'm tired of it not being spoken about. Mitchell Miller terrorized. I don't want to use the word bully. That's too nice to him. He terrorized this black kid, Isaiah. He terrorized him every day. And people want to get mad at him because his statement is going to keep this kid from playing hockey. We're valuing some white man's ability to play hockey over a human being being decent. Because I know what people would say, but if this was a black kid, shut up, shut your mouths. If Isaiah was doing this to this Mitchell kid, I said, Isaiah, you don't deserve anything in life but what you really deserve from what you did to him. This is not about black and white, although racial slurs are thrown into the mix, so it is in this case. But this isn't just about black and white. This is about human decency, Ryan. And I am tired of our society in sports because let's just be real, right? Ben Roethlisberger had a specific nickname, which I will not use on this show, but between the years of 2006 and 2008, you know what that nickname was. It was a play on his name that people were using. People don't use that anymore. It's just like that's not a part of his history anymore. Oh, Ben, you're great and white, so we don't care. Michael Vick, he couldn't show his face years after he had been in prison. Dog fighting, Ryan. You love dogs, even though you have a cat, but I'm pretty sure you like dogs. I have 2 dogs at home. I hate when people are cruel to animals. It bothers me. It does. But it was dog fighting, Ryan. Dog fighting, which he wasn't even there for. It was just his house, so someone had to take the fall for that. I'm not saying whether he didn't know or he did. This is not up for discussion, but the bottom line is it was his house, and it was dog fighting. Now, you tell me, Ryan, where dog fighting ranks to violating a human being without their consent. You tell me where that ranks, Ryan, and you tell me why that Michael Vick has to be called a scumbag to the day that he dies by a certain, and I'm not even going to try to be specific because I'm trying to be as nice as I can be about it. But you tell me why a certain subset of our country will always view Michael Vick a certain way, but Ben Roethlisberger, whoop, that doesn't matter to them.
I think that the U.S. as a whole, and this doesn't include just race, but I think the U.S. has selective outrage that continues for a certain amount of time until the next thing comes up. Ray Lewis was on trial for murdering a dude, and he's beloved by so many football players and fans, right? Like he was on trial for murdering a dude. Snoop Dogg was on trial for murdering a dude, and he is like one of the meme kings of the internet now.
Yeah, he actually is.
Race does not matter in this at all. It's all selective outrage, right? It is just in the world we live in now, it is news until the next news story comes up, until the next big thing comes up. Because honestly, with Brett Favre, it was news until Brett Favre wasn't charged with anything. They charged the people that were in charge of the funds, but Brett Favre wasn't charged with anything.
Exactly. But,
so
see, that's the point. That's the problem, Ryan. And I'll disagree with you on something, even though this isn't a political program. Race will always have something to do with it, my man.
I don't discount that.
I know what you mean. I know what you meant. And I'm not denying, Kobe was one of them too.
Yeah.
So there are examples of people of color getting that type of same treatment. That doesn't happen often, right? here's the deal, right? Here's the big deal. And this is another example that I've used 800,000 times. And yes, folks, you're going to hear it again. A Giants punter, kicker, whatever he was, his wife and kids had to be put away from him at the Pro Bowl game in Hawaii. They had to be moved to a different hotel because he was abusing them both. But nothing happened to him. Ray Rice, you're out of the league. Justifiably so. That video of him doing what he did to his current wife was horrible. It was absolutely atrocious. Out of the league. Fine. Why was that punter still there? Punter, kicker, whatever he was. Why is he still there? Why does Ben Roethlisberger get to walk around? Ironically, he and Vic wore the same number 7. I mean, of course, this wasn't, Vic in Atlanta. This was Vic in Philly. But you tell me why Vic. I had teachers when I was coming through middle school, dirtbag, scumbag, horrible human being. Ben Roethlisberger did, supposedly, allegedly, did what he did. Whoop. No mention. This kid, see, this is my problem. This kid, Isaiah, did nothing to Mitchell. He did nothing to him. But exist. That's what gets me fired up. If you are doing nothing but existing, because, ladies and gentlemen, I've been bullied for existing, so I know what that feels like. This kid existed and got beaten, spat on, embarrassed, humiliated, teased, bullied, terrorized, all of it for existing. And you have people mad at him because the NHL won't let this one little white guy play hockey. They won't let, and the reason I keep saying it specifically like that is because that's what this is about. I am not going to hold back and cut cards and make people feel comfortable because I'm just telling the truth. This one white guy can't play hockey, so the white hockey fans of America, some of them are just, that hurts their little hearts that this one little white guy can't play hockey. They don't care that this kid, because they're like, but he's not like that anymore. How do you know? How do we, and the reason why the NHL probably won't let him play, Ryan, especially after reading this, who would take that chance? Now, we know why Boston was willing to do it, because Boston has its own racial history, and we're not going to get into that. But why would you take that chance, Ryan? Because clearly, can we trust this kid's word? Because he said they were cool now. And he said he's done a whole bunch of stuff with programs. Isaiah's like, well, I asked him to show me proof of these programs, and he couldn't show me any. And no, we're not cool. So can we really trust that this kid has changed? Or has he changed because he knew this was going to come out, so he had to try to get out ahead of it? Can we trust this? Obviously, my response is no. And the reality of it is, Ryan, the fact that there are people more upset. This to me, this is like Colin Kaepernick. You had people more upset that they thought that this black man, even though he's mixed, you had people more upset that they thought that this black man who's mixed was disrespecting the military. Not recognizing, one, it was a Navy SEAL white who told him to do it that way versus sitting on the bench. That's one. They overlooked that because they don't want to hear that a white person condoned it. They don't want to hear that. Two, people were dying in the streets, Ryan. They were dying in the streets from knees being on our necks. They were dying in the streets. Kids just happened to be playing with toy guns, dying. A child buying Skittles and iced tea for his father, dying. Someone just going for a jog in the neighborhood, dying. And these people had the gall, the nerve. And I'm talking about people, Jerry Jones to a local yokel sitting at home in a trailer park. It doesn't matter where you land on that spectrum for me. People were more upset about the fact that they felt the men and women of this country were not being shown the proper respect, because how dare this black man stand up for human rights? How dare this black man exercise the right to stand up for what he believes in a peaceful way? They act like he jack-slapped somebody. How dare this black man do this? And I love the quote from Shannon Sharp. The people who said that act like black people don't serve in the military every day. every year, 365. I can't tell you how many friends I have that are in the military that are black, Ryan. My grandfather and great-grandfather served in World War II. They're both black. Where was that respect when we came over here after serving in wars and were treated like nothing? Where's that respect? I'm sick of this, Ryan. All of this ties into I am sick of this crap. I'm sick of it. I'm sick of people wanting to get mad at people for doing something when there is clearly a bigger issue at hand. I don't care if you're Republican. I don't care if you're Democrat, independent, Trump supporter, non-Trump supporter, DeSantis supporter, Hillary lover. I don't care what you are. You're a human being at the end of the day. And if someone's story like that makes you turn around and hate them because some kid can't play hockey, I don't know how to I don't know how to deal with that, man. I couldn't live with myself, and I'm not even talking about being Mitchell Miller. He's a whole piece of work on his own. I couldn't live with myself as a human being if I got mad at this kid Isaiah for telling his story because some kid can't play hockey because of it. Oh, it sickens me that this is how, not where we are, because that's a misconception that I hear a lot of people say. This is where we've been. Oh my gosh, you want to do this? Well, I think this, and fine. Everybody's entitled to have an opinion on on everything, because people have an opinion about everything. But when did caring about human decency become an opinion, Ryan? That's the problem. Human decency has become an opinion to some people. Because in their opinion, this kid did nothing wrong. They were middle schoolers. So it doesn't really matter. How shallow can they be thinking that? How shallow could those people be thinking that what Colin Kaepernick did was disrespectful? How shallow can those people be wanting to condemn someone for making, obviously, yes, a dumb mistake, and it was very harmful to animals, so I don't appreciate that either. But I don't condemn Michael Vick, and it's not because he's black. It's because this man Michael Vick was on pace to be one of the names that we talk about as being an elite quarterback. He gave all that up over a mistake that he made. Granted, he gave that up and served his time, and he didn't do this for publicity. He went to PETA meetings. He did stuff for fundraising for animals. He did that and didn't broadcast a second of it. And there are still people in this country, predominantly white, that will condemn him because, he hurt some animals. They didn't care that Colin Kaepernick was standing up for people who were having to bury their loved ones. They didn't care that Brett Favre was stealing food from people, food, school supplies, all of it. They didn't care about that because this was white man. They didn't want to touch that. They didn't care that Ben Roethlisberger had done something, allegedly, might have done something heinous. And you can make the same case for Ray Lewis, Kobe, sure, whatever. But they didn't care that these men did that. They didn't care about that. No, what they cared about was the sport. What they cared about was what they wanted to. See, that people jumped all over Deshaun Jackson and what he did. Deservedly so, because that was ignorant. They jumped on Steven Jackson for defending him, as they should. That was ignorant. Riley Cooper, we're just not going to pretend that he didn't call the security guard an N-word at a nightclub, because I guess that doesn't matter. Nope, no. See, here's the thing. Nobody condemned that. Sure, he got punished for it, but that didn't follow him. You know what I mean? They didn't follow Riley Cooper. It should have. But, at the end of the day, this is where I stand on it. I will always support human decency over everything. I don't care if it comes out LeBron James did something, and everybody knows how much I love LeBron. I don't care if it comes out that he did something. I'll condemn him because there is a certain level of human decency and respect that we should give one another, whether we're white, black, Asian, Hispanic, Latino, whatever. Whether we're religious, non-religious, whatever. Whether we're man, woman, trans, whatever. It doesn't matter. We are human at the end of the day. And the fact that it doesn't align with your political belief or whatever it may be, it's sad that you couldn't step out of your box for 1 second, one time, even if you still want this little white man to be able to scoot a puck around on ice. You couldn't step outside of that and read this kid's story and not think that that was inhumane. You couldn't step outside of that to think about that. This kid had to call Mitchell Miller his master And you can cut that out if you want to. I'm sorry. But he had to call him that to sit down at his lunch table. That's sick, Ryan, and you know that. I'm not saying this to you like you're the one doing it, but I'm just saying that's sick, Ryan. And there are people mad at him. There are people mad at this black kid, this black man now because he's our age. They're mad at him. Like he bullied this kid. Unbelievable. I'm done.
Don't think our usual way of ending things is appropriate for this, so we'll just call it. Thank you so much for listening to the main event. We'll see you next week.